Imagine the North Atlantic, a vast desert of water of a cold, relentless blue, in December 1872. The sun, unyielding, shines on the deck of a drifting ship, but the light exposes a scene that defies all maritime logic. Over 600 miles from the coast of Portugal, another vessel, the Dei Gratia, slowly approaches, and what the crew sees is bone-chilling. This ship, a 282-ton brigantine, the Mary Celeste, is sailing under sail in good condition. The sails are hoisted, albeit slightly sloppily, and the course is approximately correct for the Mediterranean. There are no signs of obvious structural damage, no visible fire, no distress flags raised. Yet as they approach, the crew of the Dei Gratia realizes something that hits them with the weight of an ice mass. The silence is absolute. There is not a single sailor at the helm to correct the erratic course, no cook in the galley preparing the next hot meal, and no captain observing the horizon. The entire crew of the Mary Celeste, 10 souls in all, including the captain's wife and a 2-year-old child, had vanished into thin air as if the ship had rejected them in a moment of instant horror. This is not the prosaic account of a common shipwreck. This is the story of a perfect ghost ship, found adrift and astonishingly intact. It is the greatest and most persistent maritime enigma of all time. What, or who, was capable of making 10 experienced people and a loving family abandon a ship that, by all accounts, was seaworthy and worth a fortune for its time? For over a century, the answers have ranged from tales of barbaric and bloody piracy to terrifying encounters with legendary sea monsters, from sophisticated insurance conspiracies to blind, irrational panic in the middle of the night. Today, in the Archive Mind, we will dive deep into the archives, reliving the lives on board, analyzing the forensic facts, and the obscure theories behind the ship that lost its crew but preserved its dignity. What we discover will make you question everything you thought you knew about terror, fear, and mystery at sea. To truly understand the dimension of this disappearance, it is essential to know the people whose lives were tragically cut short. Captain Benjamin Briggs was not an impetuous adventurer. He was an experienced seaman from a respected lineage of Massachusetts captains. His character was known for his unshakable sobriety, his meticulous command, and his deep Protestant faith, making any act of negligence unlikely. The Mary Celeste was his latest command, his pride, and his temporary home. He brought his family with him, a sign of extreme confidence and security. His wife Sarah, who had accompanied him on the high seas for years, and his 2-year-old daughter Sophia, who was taking her first steps on the deck. The 7 remaining crew members were all competent and reliable sailors, handpicked. It was a united crew. They departed from New York on November 7, 1872. The destination was Genoa, Italy. The cargo was at the heart of the future mystery: 1,701 barrels of denatured industrial alcohol, valued at the time at an impressive $35,000, a fortune that would soon attract the attention of investigators and conspiracy theorists. And here lies the cruel irony of fate, a detail that connects the mystery to a disturbing familiarity. 8 days later, the Dei Gratia, a smaller ship, also departed from New York with the same destination. The captain of that ship, David Morehouse, was a close friend of Briggs. The two had dined together and toasted to success the night before departure. Fate would seal the meeting of these two friends in a macabre way, with Morehouse becoming the discoverer of his friend's ship, and the initial suspect in his disappearance. The encounter at sea on December 5, 1872, was the starting point of the mystery. The Dei Gratia spotted the Mary Celeste sailing at about 6 knots, but in a strangely erratic manner. Captain Morehouse attempted to signal, with no response. After over 2 hours of observing the silence, the Dei Gratia's first officer, Oliver Deveau, was sent with a few men to investigate, boarding the ship that was floating in the calm water. The scene that unfolded aboard the Mary Celeste was not one of bloody horror, but of a subtle and inexplicable disorder, a quietude that screamed for an explanation. Deveau reported to the subsequent inquiry a scene of interrupted life, as if a ghost had frozen time. The ship was wet, yes, with about 3 feet of water in the bilge. Not enough to sink it, but enough to require regular pumping. The sails were partially set, but some ropes were loose. A subtle sign that the crew may have been distracted while adjusting the sails. In the captain's cabin, The table was set for a meal that was never consumed, perhaps breakfast or lunch. Personal items, such as pocket watches and shoes, were in their places, with no signs of having been stolen or abandoned in haste. Clothes, including those of Briggs's wife and daughter, were hanging to dry, defying the logic of a desperate abandonment. The voyage money, which Captain Briggs kept, was intact. The last trace of human presence was a torn page from the logbook, the last entry dated November 25th. The Mary Celeste had wandered the Atlantic for 10 full days, on its own, with no one at the helm. The key to unraveling this enigma lies in a forensic inventory of what was missing and what remained, each item a piece of silent evidence. What was absent? The 10 people. The chronometer and sextant, crucial tools for navigation, indicating the intention to return or survive. The lifeboat, launched, not destroyed. And Briggs's ornamental sword, suggesting preparation for a threat. What was present and intact? Most of the cargo and the money, ruling out theft. However, there was one broken object. The hatch cover of a forward hatch was open, and the main water pump was disassembled. And the most intriguing fact, pointing directly to the cargo. 9 of the 701 barrels of alcohol were found empty. When the Mary Celeste was towed to the port of Gibraltar for the salvage inquiry, the British authorities reacted with intense suspicion. The Attorney General, Frederick Solly Flood, turned the inquiry into an accusatory trial, convinced that a crime had occurred. Flood could not conceive that a ship so well equipped and with abundant supplies could have been abandoned without violence. He immediately suspected a conspiracy for insurance fraud or worse, murder involving Captain Morehouse and his crew. He pointed to supposed bloodstains on the railing, which proved to be red paint, and cuts in the deckwood, old axe marks. Flood even confiscated the ship for months, delaying Morehouse's payment and turning the mystery into an international scandal that fueled the popular imagination. But the lack of any evidence of real violence, bodies, or blood forced the court to release the de gratia with a salvage payment, although the shadow of suspicion hung over the ship and its discoverer. The theories, fueled by sensationalist press and horror tales, proliferated. We can dismiss the following: sea monsters or giant squids, as there were no claw or tentacle marks on the wood, and a massive attack would not have left the ship so organized. Pirate attack is implausible. The crew would not have had time to take the lifeboat, and pirates would not have left money, jewelry, food, and most of the cargo intact. Sudden illness or poisoning would explain the crew's death, but not the organized abandonment of the boat, nor the absence of bodies on deck. If everyone died, the ship would be full of corpses, and the boat would remain in place. Mutiny and fight is ruled out by the total absence of blood and the relative order of Briggs's cabin. The evidence that the crew got along and the fact that Briggs brought his family on board make mutiny highly unlikely. The key to the abandonment, to the moment of panic that made an experienced captain and his well-paid crew give up their ship, lies in the only real evidence: the open hatch, the disassembled water pump, and the 9 empty barrels of alcohol. The Mary Celeste was carrying a dangerous product. Denatured alcohol, especially in wooden barrels that tend to leak with the ship's rocking, produces highly flammable vapors. The most accepted theory today is the vapor explosion hypothesis. The 9 empty barrels indicate a significant alcohol leak in the hold. The flammable and odorless vapor would have accumulated in the sealed compartment under the deck. Captain Briggs, noticing the leak or smelling a strong odor, may have opened the hatch and disassembled the water pump to ventilate the hold in the desperate hope of avoiding a catastrophe. At some point, perhaps with a change in temperature, a sudden movement of the ship, or a dry, booming sound, the flammable vapor may have created a small, non-destructive explosion, or a loud hollow bang, possibly followed by a brief, harmless gas flare. This would not have damaged the ship's structure, but it would have been dramatically loud, terrifying, and would have convinced Briggs that the entire cargo of 700 barrels was about to explode, destroying the ship in a hellish inferno on the high seas. Briggs, in total panic, and believing he had only seconds to live, ordered the immediate evacuation to the lifeboat. The family and crew rushed to the deck. They took the essentials to navigate, chronometer and sextant, and the captain took the sword for defense in the boat. They tied the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste with a long tow line, hoping that the explosion would occur, the ship would calm down, and they could return. The act of cutting the rope, rather than untying it, suggests uncontrollable and absolute panic. The final tragedy is the simplest and cruelest. The lifeboat was never found because the tow line snapped. A sudden storm, an unexpected change in the sea, or even the drag of the ship separated the lifeboat from the ship. The Mary Celeste, vented and with its vapors dissipated, continued its safe journey, while Captain Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and his 7 crew members in the small, vulnerable boat succumbed to the open, relentless sea. They were not victims of murder, ghosts, or legendary monsters. They were victims of a fatal error in judgment provoked by panic, bad luck, and ignorance about the real dangers of the materials they were transporting. The Mary Celeste was not a ghost ship haunted by spirits, but haunted by the fragility of the human being in the face of the unknown. A timeless mystery that continues to fascinate, but finds its explanation in science and human weakness. Which theory do you find most plausible to explain the abandonment? The vapor explosion hypothesis and blind panic? Or do you still believe in a darker story of conspiracy and crime at sea? Leave your thoughts in the comment archive below, and tell us which mystery or crime case you would like the archive mind to unravel next. If you enjoy unraveling the archives of the unknown and diving into high-impact mysteries, click subscribe and hit the bell. That way, you'll never miss the next case we're ready to analyze.